Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Being asked this is effectively the end of low rank, I thought I would recap my thoughts on the experience so far. In the background I'll play footage of various monsters I had to fight before reaching the end of low rank, but I will break down the final urgent quests we need to complete before fully progressing onwards. And there is one high rank monster I want to showcase before we end as well, so make sure to keep watching to the end. Typically I write a script for every single video I post. However, for this video in particular, I thought it would be more genuine if I expressed my thoughts without having wrote a script, so while my conclusions may not fully be based in sort of substantial logic, they will definitely be based on my true feelings towards the game. So it's been quite the interesting journey progressing from episode 1 up to where we are now. In terms of content and video length, it hasn't even been an hour-long series yet, but that's because I cut out the majority of gameplay. I tried my best to trim the fat out of the video, so to speak. As such, by the end of low rank, through combined grinding in the game, material farming, doing sub-quests, so on and so forth, I accumulated around 20 hours of gameplay. So just to quickly recap, my original thoughts coming into the game was that it just wasn't particularly fun. Being a 5th gen Monster Hunter player, going back in time to try this game, features that many veteran players would see as sort of normal or a typical aspect of the game, to me was just a complete step backwards. Quality of life changes that we're used to in modern titles were just simply missing. Something in world that takes 2 seconds to do takes 10 in GU. And that really does encompass everything from preparing to a quest to running around the map trying to find your target monster, making sure to do those little things when you have found it, such as throwing paintballs, etc. Item collection speed, of course you get the point. And even now, as we've progressed to this point in the game, I hand on heart truly do believe that every single quality of life change made since GU has been positive. Where people disagree with this is they believe the core part of Monster Hunter is sort of the preparation that goes into it. It's not Monster Fighter, it's Monster Hunter, and as such you do need to take time to truly study your target, understand what you're going to need going into this mission, and through good strategy and methodology you can take on the monster that way, opposed to sort of brute forcing it and going in without a second thought. And I do get that, however I don't think that's missing in 5th gen Monster Hunter. We still have to do all these things in a sense, it's just a much accelerated process. To some that may feel immersion breaking, but for me it allows me to spend more time engaging with the game's mechanics, which is ultimately where my fun and pleasure from playing comes from. I remember bringing up the whole Whetstone argument way back when, and even though it is an isolated example of course, and you might not be able to apply that logic consistently, however let me reiterate that point. So in Monster Hunter GU, Whetstones are finite resources. Whereas in modern games, of course, you have one whetstone that you can use as many times as you want throughout the hunt. First glance, my original thought to that was, oh okay, there's more emphasis on the importance of weapon sharpening. You can't just do it as many times as you want, and hypothetically you'd be able to run out of them during a hunt. Knowing when to sharpen, or when you need to sharpen rather, becomes a huge factor during your fight with the target monster. However, what I quickly realised was you can actually completely replenish your stock of whetstones out in the world by finding various mining nodes. You can carry a stack of 20, so realistically you're never going to run out. And all this feature becomes is a case of making sure to refill your loadout before you go into the quest. Therefore, whetstones end up coming to this point where it's sort of like, well, why aren't they unlimited use if they are so easy to get and we have so many of them? If you're still with me on this train of thought, I think that logic is then broadly speaking spread across the whole game. Instead of gathering one plant point that can yield 10 different results, in modern games you can physically see what the plant is. Oh okay, there's a herb over there, I need that for a potion. But these little things is what creates such a fundamental divide in the community. Players like me see it as complete dead time in between fighting the monster. I want to engage with the world, but when it almost becomes RNG to find what I want and it takes so much extra time, it gets to a point where I end up rushing through it. Which then of course leads to the resource drought issue where all of a sudden I don't have enough resources to make mega potions. That then turns into frustration and the cycle continues. Whereas other players do just see that as sort of part of the hunting experience and the preparation that goes alongside it. So while I may sound on the surface very against this sort of old school traditional Monster Hunter, please believe me when I say I do understand the other perspective. Then of course we have combat, which is a really interesting topic because I feel that if you ask most Monster Hunter veterans which game has the best combat, they probably would say Generations Ultimate. And again, it's evident to see why someone would answer that. With so many different hunting styles and different arts that come alongside it, Each weapon essentially has 4 playstyles that can respectively be customised further. While I have played pretty much all of my playthrough purely using Valor Longsword with Shagaru Slash, once again I can still see the value in this. But for me, as positive as all that sounds, it doesn't matter when at a core level the gameplay is clunky and slow and even clumsy. We don't have that tactile approach that Rise gives us. We also don't have that fluid, weighty movement that World offers. Everything is slow, animation locks are present with almost everything you do, and don't get me started on hitboxes. Some players may view this as charm. I personally view it as annoying, and that's me just being brutally honest. Again, I think majority of Generations Ultimate players had played previous titles, or this was their first title, and so they were already used to that feeling of how the game plays. But going back in time as a 5th generation player, everything just sort of feels wrong. It's sort of how my first Dark Souls game was Dark Souls 3. As such, when I went back to Dark Souls 1, it just felt like I was playing a worse version of the game. Despite there being so many more positive aspects to admire, I almost can't see them if the core gameplay itself isn't to my liking. So in short, I suppose what I'm saying is, even though Generations Ultimate offers so many different combat options, which is great for the game, I personally can't enjoy them or bring myself to experiment with them if I don't even fundamentally enjoy walking around and swinging my sword. And I hope this isn't coming across as me dogging on the game. As I already mentioned, for those who enjoy it, I can absolutely see without you needing to explain how this could be your favourite title from a combat perspective. And when you pair that with the incredibly bulky monster roster that this game offers, I mean it literally has every monster up to that point in the series, it truly is incredible. There is so much more I could touch on in terms of things I personally don't enjoy, but I also don't want to sound like a broken record, as that general theme I've already discussed is most likely just applied to many other aspects of the game. So I do want to talk about things I found positive, because I did truly enjoy the low rank experience overall. And one of the most important things for me was the level design. Every single map had so much character and a unique factor it brought with it. I remember my very first experience was walking out into the Jurassic frontier and thinking, what have I got myself into? The Switch isn't exactly a powerhouse in hardware, even so the game looked particularly dated. Yet the more I played and walked around the world, I realised how beautiful every single locale was. And while loading between zones at first was this really inconvenient factor that I didn't think I would be able to stand, actually ended up bringing me the feeling of traversing to different parts of the locations. Instead of in modern games where you follow one path all the way through, instead you can sort of see off into the distance where you're going. For example, you may see mountains in the distance, so when you walk up that path, guess what? You now have this really big view of a forest down below. Jump down and guess what? You're in that forest. So despite limitations posed, they still made the world feel just breathing and alive. Wandering around these vibrant spaces actually ended up becoming one of the most enjoyable parts of Generations Ultimate for me. I'm worried I've been yapping on a lot and I've likely got off track multiple times, as once again I'm not reading a script, this is all completely just off the top of my head. So why don't we cut things short for now and progress. However, if you would like to ask me any questions or if you would like to know my thoughts on other areas of the game, please do leave a comment down below. I try my best to answer every single one, so if I do need to explain any point a bit further, please just let me know. Now, all of this brings us up to Shagaru Kangala. With us being required to face Gore Kangala a bit earlier on, I honestly should have expected to see this, yet even so it caught me completely off guard. After all, we still are in low rank, yet we're facing Elder Dragons. I mean, if we look at Rise, we didn't see Shagaru Kangala until Master rank with Sunbreak. We're not even in high rank yet, but despite this we're already facing such powerful monsters. Kind of ignites a bit of fear as to what lies ahead. The stage is set in an arena, something that I hadn't yet experienced in Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. This truly does set a precedent as to the challenge we're about to undertake. After all, you have nowhere to run, nowhere to retreat to. You have to face this new foe head on. And with Shagaru's mechanic being similar to Gore in a sense of, once it inflicts this blight, you're sort of in a tug of war competition where if you don't deal enough damage to Shagaru, you'll end up with a debuff. However, if you continue fighting to overcome it, it ends up working in your favour. But as you can imagine, this monster isn't going to sit idly by and let you do that. It's been a while since I fought one of these, so maybe I was just forgetting its moveset. But regardless of this, I found myself getting hit a lot. Most often I would get hit by the purple projectile, which it will sort of spawn behind you and travel at an angle whilst outside of your field of view. But that's not all Shagaru is capable of. with giant AoE blasts that step by step branch outwards in a diagonal motion, sweeping breath-like attacks, and giant slams. There is a plethora of life-threatening moves that Shagaru can pull off at any single time. As I mentioned, if you play a bit too carefully and keep your distance, you'll end up succumbing to its blight. Though as terrifying as this fight may be, it's absolutely key that you need to sort of stay close and continuously output damage. Valor style definitely helped me out. Being able to counter all of his moves allowed me to stick quite closely underneath him. Yet as the fight carried on, I found it getting more and more challenging. This felt like a war of attrition that I was beginning to lose. The hunt in total only took 12 minutes, yet this felt like the longest 12 minutes I've experienced in GU so far. It's an absolutely great way to finish a chapter of the game. It's not just challenging in terms of combat, but it also has this grandeur sense to it. In a game filled with so many quote-unquote bosses, Shagaru acts as a perfect final boss. Once you finally put Shagaru to rest, the sky around you opens up and reveals the sunshine, reflecting how you've put such an entity of darkness to rest. What felt like such a dark and gloomy arena is now this bright platform marking your conquest. And of course, with that, we have now completed low rank. We return to the village where it's brought to our attention, where we can now travel to the Sauratorium, a hunting base camp way above the clouds. And this place will act as our primary home. Majority of the quests we take on moving forward in high rank will be based from here. And I think it's only fair we do it justice by taking on our first high rank quest today. And one monster piqued my interest a lot, as we know it to be returning in Monster Hunter Wilds. Kangala is a really interesting monster. It uses the different types of mushrooms around it to impact the type of damage it outputs. For instance, if it eats a parashroom, its breath attack will now do paralysis damage. And while it's not a particularly difficult monster, if you're not paying too much attention, you'll of course get hit by its fart. This prevents all healing unless you have a deodorant. Me being me, of course, I forgot to pick these up in camp because I'm an idiot. But also me being me, instead of simply retreating to go collect them, I try and fight on low health knowing I can't heal. As such, despite me not dying one single time to Shagaru Magala, I carted twice to this monkey. In a way, this is a brilliant introduction to high rank. It shows that you're sort of back to square one and you need to treat everything with respect. Despite you taking on such a prestigious foe one quest prior, the bottom of the barrel in high rank is just as powerful. You may have seen earlier this week my community post talking about whether or not I want to continue playing through GU, and irregardless of this, I have enough footage for one more video. And while I hope I didn't come across as too negative towards the game, I think many of you seem to have gauged that maybe these older games just aren't for me personally. It's not that I have anything against it, it just doesn't mesh with my playstyle and what I look for in video games personally. So I may take a little break from the game, but that doesn't mean I'm done with it. I 100% see myself returning, and if you guys particularly want to see me continue playing, I'll be incentivized even further. So please let me know in the comment section down below. Would you like to see this series continue? Thanks for watching.